Today we're going to take a look at a build of Rashmi and Ragavan. Now, our build is a little unique. We purposely built it in a way so that our opponents wouldn't necessarily expect what we're doing, because we want this deck to fly under the radar. Everyone just kind of thinks we're not really having a good game, and then all of a sudden we pop off and win. Now, Rashmi and Ragavan does say that whenever you cast your first spell during each of your opponent's turns, you exile the top card of that opponent's library and you create a treasure token. And then you may cast that exile card without paying its mana cost if it's a spell with mana value less than the number of artifacts you control. If you don't cast it this way, you may cast it this turn. So you could be exiling stuff off their libraries and then getting the abilities of them to be able to play, which is nice. You'll notice right away how this deck is built and how sneaky it's going to hope to be. We only run two creatures. We run Hullbreaker Horror and Tidesprout Tyrant. You guessed it, we are a Polykraken deck in disguise. And we have played this deck a couple times, and both times that we have played it, everyone thought we were just kind of having a really bad day because we weren't getting any creatures to do anything with. So people kind of left us alone, and then all of a sudden we got what we needed and we comboed off, and boom, game over. Let's take a look at how we get there with some of these sorceries. We've got lots of tutors, so we've got Gamble, Merchant Scroll, Fabricate, Jessica's Will to help us make some mana, Solve the Equation, another tutor, Time Twister and Wheel of Fortune and Windfall are all here to help us refill our hands. Polymorph, there's no surprise there. What that does, we're going to polymorph our commander to get Hullbreaker Horror or Tidesprout Tyrant and start doing our thing. Reality Scramble is a way of putting a permanent we own on the bottom, revealing cards until we reveal a card that shares a creature type. So it's another polymorph type of effect, but in red. Transmogrify, same thing, another polymorph type of effect, but in red. So this one gives us at least 3 options in spells to polymorph with, where traditional polymorph decks you maybe have 2 ways of really polymorphing. This gives us at least 3 in spells, and there's a couple more we'll get to. Instants are typical of what you would expect of a cEDH deck. Lots of instants that are counter magic, ways of removing things like Lightning Bolt, Noxious Revival to return stuff, tutors. Of course, we're running our pet card here, Spell Snare. We run Brain Freeze so that we could potentially, as we pop off with the Hullbreaker Horror, we could either go for milling our opponents or ourselves, depending on where we are. Mindbreak Trap is good for us. It helps us to clear the stack. Intuition, make a really hard choice. If we choose 3 of the polymorph ways, pick one, bro. I'm gonna polymorph. What are you gonna do about it? Divergent Transformations is a really fun way of doing this, because not only are you going to exile obviously your own creature, but you can exile one of your opponent's creatures and they end up getting something worse, and then on top of that you just win over top of them and they didn't really even get used to that. Artifacts, of course, we run the normal mana rocks. We do run Lion's Eye Diamond because we are in some breach lines here with Brain Freeze, and we'll get to Underworld Breach as well in our enchantments. We do run Cursed Totem for activated abilities of creatures to really stop that from being a thing as much. It's not going to affect us as it is going to affect our opponents. We run Proteus Staff because this is polymorph but on an artifact. So we now have 5 ways of being able to interact and try to go off. So if we are stopped, our opponents really aren't going to expect us to have this many ways. So if we tried with the traditional polymorph, we're stopped, our commander goes back to the command zone or whatever happens to it. Later we can replay it, and we've got multiple ways of trying to go off. Enchantments, of course, are what you expect. Carpet of Flowers, Mystic Remora, Sylvan Library, Underworld Breach. So we have some breach lines in our deck, so we can go off with Brain Freeze if we need to as a last result. And of course, Rhystic Study. Lands are what you would expect. We do run Boseiju because it's either a land or removal. Same thing for Otawara. Homeward Path, if for some weird reason our commander is gone and being stolen by somebody, we can get it back, like if they Gilded Drake it. So we have a way of getting it back with our Homeward Path. Mystic Sanctuary is a way of getting back one of our instant or sorceries. So if we did attempt to polymorph and it was stopped and countered, then we can get it back with this. We are running Tabernacle because for us, we only have 1 creature most of the time, where our opponents are going to have more than that. So for us to pay 1 mana is not that big of a deal, but it is a very big deal for our opponents. And of course, we run Urza's Saga. so that we can maybe make constructs and maybe have some blockers. That's not the worst for us, but we also have a way of tutoring up a mana rock that is 0 or 1. We know this is not the most traditional way of building Rashmi and Ragavan, but we wanted to fly under the radar and just really sneak in those wins in a very interesting, fun way that you don't always see. If you have experience playing this deck, and if you have any recommendations for any cards or anything that you would recommend trying, please let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear some of your feedback.